Thanks everyone for being here. Good evening and welcome to the Book Club of California's online program titled Encrypted Books, Mysteries that Fill Hundreds of Pages. My name is Kevin Kosick and I'm the Executive Director of the Book Club of California, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening and host this program. Now, for those of you that are new to the Book Club of California, we are a nonprofit member and donor-supported organization that is dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes we do that with a focus on the literature and the history of California and the West. The book club publishes limited edition finely made books. We have a scholarly journal, and we have keepsakes for our members and guests. We host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one this evening, on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, California history, and as you'll find out tonight, much, much more. Now, if you're not a member of the book club, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, please consider joining our century-long tradition. Our membership dues are modest, and the benefits are many. We simply can't do the work of the book club without the support of our members. So I encourage you to visit us online at bccbooks.org to join, to donate, or to find out more about the Book Club of California. Tonight's program is titled Encrypted Books, Mysteries that Fill Hundreds of Pages. And our speakers are Elonka Dunin, author, video game developer, and cryptologist, and Klaus Schmeh, author, lecturer, and cryptologist. Now, Elonka is an experienced crypto expert, co-founder and co-leader of a group of cryptographers, that's a tongue twister sometimes, cryptographers who are working hard to crack the final cipher in the famous Kryptos sculpture at CIA headquarters. She maintains a list of the world's most famous unsolved codes on her elonka.com site, and in 2006 published the Mammoth Book of Secret Codes and Cryptograms. This is my favorite factoid here. Best-selling author Dan Brown named one of the characters in his Da Vinci Code sequel, The Lost Symbol, after her. Nola K is an anagrammed form of Elonka. Now, Klaus Schmeh is the most published cryptology author in the world. He has written 15 books in German about the subject, as well as over 200 articles, 25 scientific papers, and 1,500 blog posts. Klaus's main fields of interest are code breaking and the history of encryption. And his website, Cypherbrain, is read by crypto enthusiasts all over the world. Now, Klaus is a popular speaker known for his entertaining presentation style, which you'll get some of tonight. And he has lectured at hundreds of conferences, including the RSA conference that's here in San Francisco. In his day job, Klaus works as a crypto expert for a global IT security company. Now, together, Elonka and Klaus co-authored Code Breaking. And I think you can see it behind Elonka in her screen there in the back. Code Breaking, a practical guide, the most up-to-date resource on cryptanalysis published since World War II. Essential for modern forensic code breakers and designed to help amateurs unlock some of history's greatest mysteries. Now, our speakers have studied about 120 books that are entirely or partially encrypted. In this talk, they'll introduce the most fascinating ones to you, including a 15th century tome that has never been deciphered, and a 17th century creation that was recently solved by Hungarian scientists. They'll talk about encrypted diaries, books published by secret societies, and enciphered books created by artists. Of course, they're going to cover encryption techniques, how they work, and how they are broken. Now, if you have any questions for our speakers, please use the chat and the Q&A functions in Zoom. We will have time at the end of the presentation to have a conversation, and we'll source the conversation topics from the questions and comments in the chat and the Q&A. Now, I've said more than enough. I hope I haven't given too much away about our speakers or about what they're going to talk about. But it is now my great pleasure to introduce Elonka Dunin, and Klaus Schmeh. Well, it's all yours. I'm going to go silent and I'll be back later.
All right. Thank you. And wonderful introduction. Thank you. I think there's not much more for us to cover, but we'll give you a few pictures here. So this is our first time speaking here at the BCC. We're very honored to be here. Thank you. As Kevin mentioned, I am a game developer and authority and a book author. And
yes, my name is Klaus Schmeh. I'm a German IT security consultant, crypto expert, and book author. And together with Elonka, I have written
Code Breaking, a Practical Guide, even 2 editions of it. The expanded edition came out in 2023. We'll start off here. So this is an example of an encrypted book. It's at the British Library. I can't pronounce that title there, but it is a published book in print there. And you can see, might we decipher it? Well, we're going to do frequency analysis and count the letters in it. This is a standard English frequency table where you can see that the most common letter in English is the letter E. About 12.7% of letters come out to be the E. And when we do that on this book, it comes out and we can kind of decrypt it that way. And so when we did that, we were able to find out which letters were the most frequent. Now, it wasn't 100%. There were some letters that were in the clear and there were mistakes, and that's really common with any kind of encryption. Imagine that if you're just writing a business letter, how often that you'll come up with typos when you can read it. And so, but anyway, this book was decrypted and it came out to say ancient mysteries. It was the Association of Maiden Unity and Attachment from London in 1835. Now, we haven't been able to find any other history of this Association of Maiden Unity and Attachment, but there are these 2 books that were published in 1835. So whatever it was, they had enough funding and willpower to publish these 2 books. From what we've read in the books, they say it was a secret organization for women that existed around 1835. And other than that, we just don't know much. Here's an excerpt from the book. It says, "Yet though the goddess and the nymph confessed those mutual sires, that pure and ardent glow." It seems the association was aspiring to impart a tone to society. But again, we don't know a whole lot. This was their statute. So this talk will be about that book and other books and mysteries that fill hundreds of pages. And there are plenty of other encrypted texts, postcards, letters, telegrams, even the crypto sculpture at CIA headquarters. But this particular talk, we're going to be talking about those that were books. And books are great because you get a lot of ciphertext to work with, which makes it easier to crack these codes. And it also indicates that there was some willpower to do this, to take many different pages and put them together and publish an actual book. So Klaus created this list, which we call the EBL, the Encrypted Book List. It has about 125 books as of today. And he started it with the Voynich Manuscript that's at the top left. We'll come back to that. And then he just added books to the list as he ran across them. So the book that we just talked about was EBL number 6. That was the 6th book that he ran across, so he added it to the list. Now, most of these books are cracked. There are ciphers in the books that have been cracked. There are 15 that still remain unbroken. So now we'll go back to Klaus.
Okay, let's now look at one of these books on the list. Well, these are actually 13 books, as we will see, all from the same author. So I'm talking about Charles Dellschau's books. On my list of encrypted books, they are the number 84. And on the next slide, we see These books were written by Charles Dellschau, who lived from 1830 to 1923. He was born in Germany, in my home country, in Berlin, but he emigrated to the US at the age of 19, and he worked as a butcher. So probably nobody really knew that he also was an artist. But between 1908 and 1921, he created 13 illustrated books. And well, as you see, 1908, that was when he was 78 years old, and he created this book until he was 91. So he was in his he was quite old when he created these books. He might have created other artworks as well, but they are lost because he remained completely unknown during his lifetime, and only after his death his books were discovered. And this is why he is called an outsider artist. He never attended an art school, and as I said, during his lifetime, he worked as a butcher, and nobody knew that he was an artist. And after his death, it lasted several decades until his books were discovered, and it was that they were discovered by a junk dealer who uncovered them from a trash heap. And on this picture, you see one of these books. It's not in very good condition, which is no wonder, considering that they that it was planned to throw them away. And so we are quite lucky that these books still exist. Okay. Now you might wonder what these books are about. Well, these 13 books contain about 2,500 images, and each image depicts a flying machine. And allegedly, these flying machines used an anti-gravity fuel. They were invented by the Sonora Aero Club, which was a branch of a secret society named NIMSA. And these books contain many encrypted texts. That's why they came on my list. So all this looks quite mysterious, but there are even people who say that this is real, but in my view, this is nonsense. These books are science fiction. So they are science fiction from the early 20th century, and apparently Charles Dellschau was interested in this kind of science fiction. Here we see two of these flying machines. Some of the machines look like balloons, others like dirigibles or flying carriages or ordinary airplanes. Sometimes the pilot or passengers can be seen. Here's another one. This one looks more like an early airplane. On the next page, we see, no, well, here we see another of the 13 books. The current owners are, there's the manual collection in Houston, Texas, and the Texas State University both own a couple of these pictures, but of these books, but some of them are also in private possession, and the location of some of these books is unknown at the moment. So it's difficult to get a real overview about all these books because they are not collected in one place. Here we see another flying machine from Dellschau's books. Well, in my view, this looks really fascinating, and all these pictures were drawn by Charles Dellschau, by a single person. Here we see another one of these flying machines, and there are many of these, and a great variety of these flying machines. The books have never been published, at least not all of them, and most images are not even available online, so it's not that easy to occupy oneself with Charles Dellschau and his art. And there is no collection of the ciphertexts that appear in these books. And most ciphertexts haven't even been decrypted, although it's possible that the code is broken. But so far, as far as I know, nobody has taken the time to decrypt all these messages. So on the next slide, we see, as I already mentioned, there are about 2,500 of these images. So Dellschau was very productive, and apparently he always drew the same or very similar motive. And maybe he even created more art, but everything except these 13 books is lost because nobody knew that he was an artist during his lifetime. Here we have a number of encrypted texts from these books. This is what makes the whole story interesting for us. Some of these texts are pretty short, others a little bit longer. It's not very difficult to decrypt, or at least the key is known. On the next page, we see that a list of these letters is given on one of the pages, and it's not very difficult to construct the key out of this list because the letters are ordered. So basically, it's not very difficult to decrypt the messages, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Here we have one example. This is an easy one. We have a word consisting of 5 letters, and the first letter is an N. The second one is a Y. Then the equal sign stands for an M. The X stands for a Z. And finally, this 0 symbol stands for the A. So we have NIMSA. And NIMSA, that's the name of this alleged secret organization that is mentioned throughout the book. Here we have another encrypted text from one of the books. Now this one is a little longer. We can decipher it in a very similar way. And the plain text is, man muss sich zu helfen wissen. It contains 2 mistakes, but it's a German phrase. And this is one of the reasons why these texts are difficult to decipher, because they are a mixture of between German and English, and they contain many mistakes. So it's not really known yet what all these texts say. It would be an interesting research project to decipher all these messages, but so far as I know, nobody has done this. Okay, there are only 2 books about Dellschau, or at least I'm only aware of these 2 books. The left one is mainly a book containing images, not much text, not much information about Dellschau himself is provided there. And the right one is written by an author who actually believes that these stories about this Aero Club and about these flying machines is true, which is pretty ridiculous in my view. In my view, it's absolutely clear that this is science fiction, but some people say they believe that it's real. So all we can say, there's still a lot room for research. Would be interesting to have more books about Dellschau and more information about his life and about his art.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now we'll go on to a well-known encrypted book, the Voynich Manuscript. It's considered the most famous encrypted book in the world. And on the EBL, it is at number 1. That's when Klaus started creating the list. And it was allegedly purchased from a Jesuit convent, the Villa Mondragone, south of Rome, in 1912 by a Polish-American book dealer, Wilfrid Voynich. And he owned it until his death. Then it passed on to his wife, and then through a few other hands, and eventually to the Beinecke Rare Book Library, where it is today. So what we know about it is that it's all handwritten, has about 230 pages. It was written on 15th century vellum. It has been radiocarbon dated. It has over 200 illustrations and an unknown origin and unknown purpose. Here is more of a close-up version. Every time I look at this, I sort of think of Dr. Seuss. I think that Dr. Seuss may have seen some of the Voynich images and used them as inspiration for some of his own drawings. But the script is unknown and has never been deciphered. You can see also in this image some women. This is a very common element in the Voynich manuscript is some nude women that are bathing in pools of what today we see as green liquid. There may have been other colors that have faded. This thing is over 500 years old, but you can see fluid flowing in, and as we'll see in other pictures, there it flows out, and so it goes into one pool and out to another pool and into another pool. So there's this flowing from one to another over the pages. Here is one of the plants that you can see. There are hundreds of images of plants. If you look closely at the root system, you can see it looks like the root has been kind of cut off, and this is a common element in the Voynich. And I have been told by people who transport plants that often this is what will happen, is instead of transporting an entire plant, they will cut it off at the root and only transport the roots. And then when they get to where they need to be, then they'll take the root and resprout it, or potentially they will add something to it, and so be combining a couple of things together. We don't know, but we do know that many of the Voynich images have this cut root system. Here is another plant. You can see that the writing kind of wraps around the plant, between the stems and around the root system. Sometimes we can see that the writing must have been on the page first, or maybe it was written in a way to allow space for whatever plant was then coming. But we cannot identify these plants. Then there are the little women, as I mentioned. Here is another one where you can see that the fluid is coming in on the left, and then it's also flowing out to something further down on the page. And where the water is coming from, these kind of hive-like structures, they also look very organic. And some people have suggested that these are representing perhaps female ovaries and such, in a way to say that perhaps the women were bathing in water that would help them to achieve pregnancy. Many of the women do kind of look a little bit pregnant, but it is very mysterious. Why would so many of these little almost pregnant women be bathing in a similar pool? We don't know. And there are zodiac signs. This was something that was definitely known around Europe in the 1400s. These are just three of them: Sagittarius, Aries, and Scorpio. And there are, I think, two of each of the signs, if I'm recalling correctly. And then there is this one page, this big fold-out page that is well known, called the Rosettes page. I'll come back to that in a minute. So the illustrations are not particularly meaningful. And even with all these hundreds of illustrations and hundreds of little pictures of naked women, we don't know much about what time that these pages were created, or where, or is it a religion? Because if you look at the Christian pages around that time, you would expect different kind of marginalia around the margins there. And we don't really have those kinds of symbols here. The culture is generally European. But do we know much about the science that they're trying to portray? We don't know. Technology, we don't know. So just a lot of we don't knows. This is Greg Hodgins, a professor from Southwestern United States. He is the radiocarbon expert who is allowed to shave off a tiny little piece of a couple of pages and do that radiocarbon dating. The dating it's never 100% precise, but is generally expected that the pages, the animals from which the hides the vellum was created. So the animals lived around 1408 to 1438. This may or may not tell us something. It may just mean that someone got blank sheets later and wrote on them. It may mean that that's around the time period that the manuscript was created. So again, we don't know a whole lot. This is another scientist, microscopist, Joe Barabi. He also examined the manuscript. He was looking for the inks and the dyes that were being used, and he definitely identified that they were consistent with a 15th century origin. So again, we kind of tie into the 1400s there. So now we come back to the Rosettes page. You can see that it's 9 circles that are kind of connected. Some say that it sort of looks like a map, and you're looking down at the circles that are connected by these bridge-like structures. Almost you can see waves kind of brushing up against them. And at the top right, in one of the rosettes, there is a small picture of a castle. And if we rotate that castle and take a look at it, the battlements of this castle have this kind of dip in them, which is an architectural detail, which today we know as a swallowtail merlon. And today you can find castles with swallowtail merlons kind of all over the place. But at the time that we believe that the Voynich manuscript was created, which was in the 15th century, there was really only one area of Europe that had these swallowtail merlons, and that was in northern Italy. So maybe it gives us an indication of where the Voynich manuscript was created. Maybe not. We don't know. So, you know, if we're guessing and we say northern Italy, and then we're kind of doing this, maybe the Voynich manuscript early on was owned by Emperor Rudolf II, the Holy Roman Emperor in Prague. And we have been able to use some blacklight viewing of one of the pages of the Voynich that has the name Tepanitz on it, which is the royal botanist at the time. And then we also know that at some point, the Voynich manuscript was owned by an intellectual, Athanasius Kircher, because we have a letter written by him saying that one of his colleagues, they were trying to look at the Voynich and trying to burst its bonds to understand what it was that it said. We do know that the Voynich was probably at this Jesuit convent near Rome, the Villa Mondragone, and that it was allegedly purchased 1912 by Wilfrid Voynich. And then after his death, it went through various hands to where it is today, which is the Voynich Rare Book Library. And it has been there for decades at this point. The Voynich makes kind of news every so often because someone will say, I have solved Voynich, and the news, international news, will pick it up somewhat uncritically, saying that the scientists have cracked it. But none of these solutions really hold up. There will be other people who say, no, we don't think it's cracked. So let's go on to a little bit about how was the text created. Is it ordinary text that's written in an unknown script? Was it just a sort of handwriting that's unusual? Is it possible that it's encrypted text? Maybe. Or is it nonsense? Klaus and I have arguments about this all the time, and I change my mind quite frequently. So let's look at the letter frequencies. So this is not the Voynich. This is just the languages, German, English, Latin, and Italian. And if you look at their frequencies of the alphabets, you can see that both German and English, the E is the most common letter. In Latin is I, and in Italian, E, A, and I are kind of close together. If we look at the Voynich and the letters of the Voynich, you can see that these are the symbols that are the most frequent. So if we look at the pattern of the most frequent, the next most frequent, that kind of matches with English, which may or may not tell us anything. Then we look at word frequencies. So again, this is German on the left. Which words are the most common? And in English, which words are the most common? The most common word, the, is the, followed by and of, and so forth. So again, if we're kind of comparing this with the Voynich and we're looking at the words or the groups that look like words in the Voynich, and we look at those patterns, it doesn't really look like English at that point. At that point, it looks more like German. But again, this may or may not tell us anything. We have counted the words in the Voynich. So we have about 35,000 words, letters, 170,000 letters. And there is an alphabet of symbols that's about 23 symbols. So if it sort of looks like natural language, right? Because you got the words, you got the symbols. People who are working on it will often call this Voynichese as the alphabet for it. But if it's natural language, well, which one might it be? Words with one or two letters, very, very few words with one or two letters. Words with more than 10 letters, none that we have found. So it's an unusual text. We have a linguist, Jan Henrik Holst. He speaks 20 languages, has basic knowledge of about 60. And he said, the text in the Voynich manuscript is clearly different from any language I know. So take that for what it's worth from a linguist. So going back to our observation, it looks like natural language, but second observation, it really doesn't look like a natural language. So again, it maintains its mystery. So how was the text created? Is it an ordinary text in an unknown script? Well, no. Is it an encrypted text? Maybe. And is it nonsense? Well, again, this is one where Klaus and I debate this all the time. And he was the one that created the slide, so he's going to say probably nonsense. So conclusion from on the left, is it natural language? To on the right, is it nonsense? Well, it's probably some mixture between the two. What we do know for sure is that the Voynich manuscript remains unsolved.
Okay, let's now come to a completely different encrypted book. It used to be a mystery too, but I think meanwhile it is solved. On the encrypted book list, this book is the number 18, yes. So, we call it Emil Snyder's booklet. On the next page, we will see who Emil Snyder actually was. He was an attorney living in Detroit. He was born in Germany. Maybe in Germany he had the name Schneider, which is quite common. Snyder might be the English form of it. And apparently he worked in Detroit as a lawyer. And we don't know much about him, but according to the only source we have, he died an unnatural death. And what makes this guy interesting for us? After his death, his son found a booklet in his possession. Here see two pictures of this booklet. It had about the size of a passport, and well, it contained only 9 pages, which is of course not very much for a book, but this gives us the chance to look at all of the pages from this book. This is page number 1, and you see we can't read anything in this book. It must have been encrypted in one way or the other. Or, well, if we assume that it's not complete nonsense, what is written here, there must have been some kind of encryption process involved. And if we leaf through the book, we see that all of the content looks pretty much the same. And it's no wonder that the son of Emil Snyder was quite confused when he found this book in the possession of his late father. So the son of Snyder had no idea what this booklet was about. So he asked a local journalist. And this journalist didn't know either what all this was about. So he asked Cryptologia. Cryptologia is a well-known scientific magazine about encryption technology and its history. And apparently, the editors of Cryptologia didn't know either what this book was about. They saw that it was probably encrypted in some way, but they had no clue what kind of encryption it was and what the purpose of this booklet actually was. So they published this short article in Cryptologia in 1978, and they asked their readers if anybody could solve it. I don't know if this really happened, but what I know is that the solution was never published in Cryptologia. This booklet was never mentioned again in the following issues of this journal. Well, about, I think 25 years later, or 35 years later, I read about this booklet in Cryptologia. And of course, I didn't have an idea either what all this was about, but I published it on my blog and I asked my blog readers, does anybody know what this strange book is about and can anybody break the encryption? And in fact, there were quite a few comments from my readers. And well, one thing I found strange is the letter combination FY. It made me think that these letters could be abbreviations of words. FY could stand for you or 5 yards or fantastic years. So my guess, and well, I wasn't the only one, my readers said the same. They said, well, this looks like abbreviated text. Then I received a comment from Armin Kraus, a German codebreaker in 2013, and he said, well, this encrypted booklet looks like a ritual description of the Freemasons. Sounded plausible to me, and then I looked for other or I looked for Masonic ritual descriptions online, and I found quite a few. And I think there's a certain similarity between Snyder's booklet and these ritual descriptions. Here it's quite obvious. On the next slide, we see another comparison. Here it's a little less obvious, but the concept is the same. Letters that seem to make no sense. On the next slide, we see another example. I think this looks really similar, and the form of the booklet and the size is similar too. So this made me think that we were on the right track. Okay, and then in the same year, I received another comment from another German reader, Gordian Knaus, and he said, no, I don't think this is a document of the Freemasons. It's probably published by the Oddfellows. And to be honest, I had never heard of the Oddfellows before, but of course I checked it, and it turned out that the secret order of the Oddfellows was an organization pretty similar to the Freemasons. It's a very old organization, founded in the 18th century. And just like the Freemasons, they have their rituals. So it made sense to assume that this document was a ritual description. And finally, it was Nick Pelling, a British cipher expert and blogger, who finally solved the mystery when he posted, well, Snyder's booklet is an abbreviated version of an Oddfellow book titled Esoteric. And on the next slide, we see that he was absolutely right. On the right side, you see the book Esoteric, and on the left side, the booklet of Emil Snyder. And if you look at the starting letters on the right side, they match exactly with the content of the booklet. Second word starts with an E, then the next one with a C, and then the next one with an O, and then another O. So this was definitely the solution. So apparently this booklet of Emil Snyder was an abbreviated version of the book Esoteric. And now you might ask what this book Esoteric is about. Well, it's a ritual description of the Oddfellows. Here we see an excerpt. First, when a brother shall desire to be recognized as an Oddfellow by a member of the order, he shall grasp with his right hand the lapel of his coat, the hand being placed over the right nipple, the thumb extending upward. Okay, this is an initiation ritual of the Oddfellows. And so we can conclude now that apparently, on the next slide, let's look at the letters FY first. Apparently they stand for you. And now that we know that this comes from an Oddfellow book, we can conclude that Snyder apparently was a member of the Detroit Oddfellows. And of course, I checked this online. There was actually an Oddfellow organization in Detroit. at the time in question. It doesn't exist anymore today, although the Oddfellows still exist, but in Detroit they don't exist anymore. But their building still can be found on Google Earth. And this is how it looks today. Apparently it's a restaurant today, but 100 years ago, it was the headquarters of the Detroit Oddfellows. And apparently Emil Snyder was a member of this organization, and probably he spent some time in this building. So I think we can say that this mystery is solved now.
All right, thank you. When we look at the EBL, many of the books there are related to secret societies. These books could be related to the Freemasons or the Oddfellows. That first one we talked about, the Association of Mating, Unity, and Attachment. There's one called the Black Gangster Disciples. On the right, we have the Oculists. I thought it was occultists, but no, it was oculist. It's related to something to do with eyes. So those are several members of the EBL. Going on to our next one, we're going to look at a diary. This is Donald Hill's diary. So diaries themselves go back to the time of Egypt. There was one that was discovered. It was on pages that had been buried near the Nile. And it was about someone who was transporting blocks of stone to potentially one of the Great Pyramids. In terms of encrypted diaries, though, the oldest one that we know of goes back to William Byrd II. He lived from 1674 to 1744. And several of these people were very well known in history. And what they wrote in their diaries, now that we have decrypted them, is actually a wonderful lens into their time period. Often they were decrypting things that really, or encrypting things that really couldn't be discussed in polite society. And that's why they were encrypting them in the first place. Anne Lister, for example, on the top right there, she was a lesbian and would write in her diary with encrypted text about some of her sexual liaisons. And this is very important historically. Modern lesbians will look at that and be able to find out what was it like for people in that society at that time. I'll come to a couple of the others here. So let's see. There are 40 encrypted diaries on our list, or Klaus's list, the EBL. And we're going to look at Anne Lister's diary. That's number 34. She lived from 1791 to 1840, and she was well known in British society. She was a landowner, a mountaineer, a traveler, a diarist, and is considered the first modern lesbian. And she was prolific with her diaries. We have 27 volumes of diaries, 6,600 pages. About a sixth of the text is encrypted. Most of it, I believe, has been decrypted at this point. And most diaries are easy to decrypt because if you're writing, just writing and writing, you want something that's fairly easy, fairly simple to encrypt because you're writing. You don't want to stop and be looking at each particular page. So another diary we're going to take a brief look at is Beatrix Potter. She was number 20 on the list. She was the author of children's books, you may recall, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. And she invented her own encryption system while she was very young, while she was a teenager, and would write about things that occurred in the day. And now all of this has been decrypted at this point. Leslie Linder, who is a big Potter fan, has written a book called The Journal of Beatrix Potter, where he looked at every single page of her diaries and has decrypted all of it and has been to all of the locations that have been mentioned. So it's interesting. It's interesting reading. Next, we're going to look at something that is very different. This is Donald Hill's diary. So this is number 41 on the list. And he was a British military pilot in World War II, stationed in Hong Kong. And he kept his diary encrypted from the start as a series of numbers, and I'll talk about it. And he was captured by the Japanese, sent to a POW camp. and was there for 4 years. And he was able to continue maintaining the diary while he was at the POW camp because it didn't look like a diary. It looked like numbers instead of letters. So he disguised it. He said it was a collection of multiplication tables. And this is one of the pages of his diaries. After he was released and he went home and didn't really talk much about what had happened to him during the war. After his death, his widow went to a local university with these diaries and asked if someone could read them, could decrypt them. And a mathematician, Philip Ashton at Surrey University, was able to break this code in 1996. And the way that it worked, I won't go into great detail on it, but basically each letter had a number equivalent. And then you would also see in various places, there would be like a separator. Here you can see the number 4,000. And so there would be blocks of 4-digit numbers that would be in certain letters, and there would be another transition. Long story short, he was able to decrypt them. They were rearranged by a key word. So an example diary entry that he wrote, it was clear that he was very able to write this without much difficulty. So he's encrypting it while he's writing and saying, Monday 8th, I am disturbed early as the colonial secretary rings up to say that war with Japan is imminent. Hell, there goes my sleep. And I wake the other officers. Over breakfast, we are told that we are at war with Japan. So I won't go on and read all of it, but that he wrote it in kind of this casual format and was able to encrypt mathematically as he went along is really a remarkable thing. And there's a whole book that was written about his diaries with the decryption of the diaries, if anyone would like to read that. So back to Klaus.
Okay, let's now come to the last chapter. And well, as you can imagine, there are many more encrypted books we could talk about. There are about 125 on the list. Let's now look at some of the most interesting ones. For example, Bellicorum Instrumentorum. That's one of the oldest encrypted books we are aware of, number 29 on the list. It was written by a polymath named Giovanni Fontana. And this book is today owned by the Bavarian State Library in Munich, Germany. As you see, this book contains pictures of machines or devices and encrypted text. The encrypted text is pretty easy to decipher. We don't even know if this encryption was used for secrecy or if it was used for a kind of magic or if it was just a part of the art that's used here. On the next page, we see a few more of these devices, and one of the scholars wrote, all this looks like it has been created during drug highness. And that's certainly true. Well, the author of this book, Giovanni Fontana, is certainly a very interesting person. He invented and wrote a lot of things. Much of it is nonsense, but it's still interesting. So he was a very prolific scientist, but not necessarily a successful one. And as you can imagine, these machines don't make much sense. Here we see an excerpt from the text. It's encrypted, and as I said, it can be decrypted quite easily, and the key is known. So, or let's look at another encrypted book from the list. This one is number 118. This is also very interesting. It has a very interesting history. It's also pretty old, from the early 16th century. It's titled Steganographia. And at first view, it's a book about magic. It contains a lot of magic spells and a lot of numbers that have allegedly a magic meaning. So very mysterious, but in fact, all these numbers and all these names of angels or so have got nothing to do with magic, but they contain a hidden code. So the whole purpose of this book is to hide encrypted messages, and if these messages are decrypted, they contain nothing really meaningful. It's just nonsense messages disguised as magical instructions. So the whole book is a hoax from which is more than 500 years old. And it took pretty long until all these codes could be decrypted. And interestingly, in the 1990s, the last part of this book was decrypted by two scientists independently from each other. I think the one was 1 year earlier than the other one, and when he had finished his scientific article, he realized that somebody else had published the same thing a year before. So a very interesting story about a very interesting book that was a hoax from the late 15th century. Would be no problem to give a talk about this book only. But of course, we don't have the time now. Let's now look at the next book, also a very interesting one. This one is a lot newer. It's from the 20th century, James Hampton's Notebook, number 3 on my list. James Hampton was another outsider artist. You can see him here. He worked as a janitor, and during his lifetime, he was completely unknown. Nobody knew that he was an artist. Only after his death, his only artwork was found in a garage he had rented. And here you can see it. It's a kind of altar, and it's made out of cheap material, mainly aluminum foil, also glass and paper. So this artwork is today exhibited in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. I've seen it several times. It's really impressive in my view. And as I said, nobody knew this artwork during the lifetime of the artist. Only after his death it was discovered. And also discovered was this notebook kept by James Hampton. It contains about 100 pages, and these pages are encrypted. And this is an unsolved mystery. Nobody knows what this encrypted text means, if it has a meaning at all, or how the encryption works, if it's really encrypted. So this is a complete mystery. And so this is another one of the unsolved encrypted books on our list. The next one is another really maybe the most beautiful book in this collection. It's the Journal of Ernest Rinsey, number 88 on the list. Ernest Rinsey was a miniature painter. He was Italian, but he lived in London, and he created many of these small pictures. You see one on in the right upper corner. He was quite successful with selling these small pictures, but he also created a book or a journal, handwritten, with many paintings. He was an artist, so the paintings have a very high quality. And as you see here, this book contains a lot of unreadable text. It was not known if this text really made sense, but then a blog reader of mine solved the mystery. He was able to break the encryption. It was Tony Gaffney, a London-based code breaker. And so he broke the code, but nobody has ever taken the time to decrypt the whole text, because it's a book with several dozens of pages, and the text is hard to read because it's so small. Well, after all, Rinsey was a miniature painter. So very fascinating book, but nobody really knows what is written in there except for a few lines. So if you're looking for an interesting research project, here you go. As I said, the code is known. All you need to do is do the decryption of these many pages. And as you see, the pictures are really nice. Yes, exactly. I agree. This is a PhD dissertation just waiting to happen. The next one I'm going to introduce is the so-called Rohonc Codex. It's number 2 on my list, because this is maybe the second most famous or the second most mysterious encrypted book after the Voynich Manuscript, or at least that used to be the case. We see it on the next page. It's in some sense similar as the Voynich Manuscript. It contains a couple of pictures and text nobody could read until a few years ago. And the pictures in this case are different from the ones in the Voynich Manuscript because they mainly contain Christian motifs. So the Voynich Manuscript doesn't contain anything about religion, but the Rohonc Codex contains many pictures, mainly from the New Testament, but also from the Old Testament. So it's clear that this must have a Christian background. But apart from that, it wasn't readable until a few years ago. But then two Hungarian scientists claimed to have solved the Voynich Manuscript. And of course, most of the experts were skeptical. But meanwhile, their solution is accepted. Apparently, they could solve the encryption. They found out that the text is a Christian treatise in Hungarian, so certainly difficult to read for somebody who doesn't speak Hungarian. But it was quite a surprise to me that this book was solved, but it proves that it's possible to solve mysteries of this kind. And this makes this topic so fascinating that things like that happen quite often. Things you don't expect happen and things are solved you don't expect. So, but still, there's a lot of place for research. Encrypted books in general are a great field of research, and there's still a lot to do, many additional encrypted books to cover. Some of them need to be solved, others need to be encrypted based on a code that is known. And the history of many books is not clear. So absolutely fascinating topic. And well, it was our pleasure to introduce some of the encrypted books we know, but there are certainly a lot more.
That was great. Let's leave this slide up for a minute so people can get your email addresses and your websites so they can go check some stuff out. And let's have we have time for a couple of questions, and there's a couple in the chat and the Q&A. If you have looked at them and you want to answer any of them, that's fine. I think I want to start with the question that someone sent me, which is, are new encrypted texts coming to your attention like all the time? Are there more out there? How do they come to you? And I think what really qualifies a book, for example, as an encrypted book or a cryptography? Like, what are the, the boxes that need to check off for it to fall into your lap for you to put it on the list?
Okay. Well, first of all, it needs to be a book. If it's only one page or so, it's not a book. There needs to be a collection of pages, and a kind of encryption needs to be included. Some of the books are only partially encrypted, but that also counts. But some of the content needs to be unreadable. And at least there must be a certain probability that it's possible to change this unreadable text in a readable one using a key. Of course, in some cases, especially in the case of the Voynich manuscript, we don't know if this key exists. It might be complete nonsense. So if it's complete nonsense, it doesn't belong on this list because it's not encrypted. But we don't know. And as long as there's a certain probability, it certainly belongs on the list.
Right. We tend to look for older books as newer books. There's some that might have just been created as hoaxes, but if someone says they found someone in the attic, found something in the attic, we're much more interested in it. Yeah, older is better.
Older's better.
New books show up all the time. Well, all the time is a little exaggerated, but it happens. I sometimes do Google searches. For example, if you search for encrypted diary, you will find new books once in a while. Some of them are quite recent. So people say, well, here's my encrypted diary I wrote as a child or something like that. But there are also old ones, people saying, here's an encrypted diary from my grandmother all this happens. And well, there are other encrypted books that come to our attention, and especially these encrypted books by the Freemasons are used to be very popular. So it would be no problem to add 20 more Freemason books to this list because they created so many.
Right. And we do give talks on famous unsolved codes. And when each time we give the talk, we have to re-examine, have any of those famous unsolved codes been solved? And then I switch it and go, okay, I'm going to talk about how this one was solved. And then I have to rework the talk the next time I give it.
Yeah. Love the solved and unsolved stamps that you put on the screen for each of the books there. Where can folks find the list, the EBL, of all of the 125 that are on there and the 15 that are still unbroken and all that?
If you go to my website, here you see schmeh.org, you come to my blog. Well, it's not active anymore. I used to blog for 10 years, but then I took a break, and this break is still on. But on the title page of the blog, you will find a link to the encrypted book list.
Great. Because some people asked if specific books were on it or not. You guys can go look up the list yourself to answer that, as opposed to asking every single one here. You mentioned and you shouted out the couple of different people who solved some of the encryptions on some of these texts, and that kind of raises the question, like, who is actually actively working on these unbroken texts, these 15 that are out there? Are there universities? Are there individuals? Are there groups of people that are actively pursuing solving some of these?
Well, I think basically there is a scene of crypto enthusiasts, and I think Elonka and I are a part of this scene, but we're not really the active code breakers. We are more the people who give talks and write books and articles. But there are also people who are very active in breaking these messages, not only books, of course, but all kinds of encrypted text. And most of them are not directly working for a university. It's more, these are more hobby projects.
Great. Great. So yeah, you're scrolling through the list there. Terrific.
Yes.
I think we have to ask the question about how each of you got involved in this, got inspired to dedicate so much of your time and your energy and your academic work to code breaking and deciphering these texts and solving some of these
You want to start
cases.
Sure. I don't have a college degree. So when I'm publishing academic papers, I'm kind of on Klaus's coattails there. I have just always been interested in codes since I was a kid. I come from a long line of mathematicians, and I was just fascinated. I'd pick up a book of crossword puzzles and I'd rip out all the crossword puzzles and throw them away because I was interested in the codes at the back of the magazine. And if we fast forward through my life, I heard about codes at various conventions, and I heard about one while I was at DragonCon, and I cracked it, and then cracked some other challenges, and have actually cracked so many I've been banned from competition. Like at the AtlantaCon convention, they had their code on a sheet of paper, and at the bottom it said, "Note: past puzzle solvers are ineligible for prizes associated with solving this. Give someone else a chance, Elonka." I cracked that one too. It just kind of grew from there. And then Cryptos and Dan Brown, and yeah, just kind of stumbled through.
Yes. Well, my interest in encryption started pretty late. I think I was 25 or so. When I went to university, I studied computer science at a German university, and just by chance, I got into a class about cryptology. I didn't even know what that is, what it was, but I think after the first two classes, I realized that this was exactly my topic, and so I changed all my study plans and focused on cryptography, and that's 30 years ago now. And I think in the last 30 years, this has been my favorite hobby, but also my profession.
Right, there's a bunch of very specific questions in the chat and the Q&A, and we're not going to talk about them here. I'm going to send them to you to see if you want to have a response. There's a couple things about the Voynich manuscript and some theories and some questions about it and your opinion on it. My favorite question, I think, in the chat is, how can you volunteer with a code breaker? How do you get into this business?
I actually just answered that in chat saying,
oh, you did? Great.
Is, you know, in the United States, there's the American Cryptogram Association, and they publish a newsletter every couple months with a whole bunch of codes in it, and you can get points if you solve them, and they've got tips and tricks on solving codes. There's also mystery twister, which is where if you want to kind of get your teeth into various types of codes, people will submit codes to this website, the crypto challenges. And
I think that's a very good place to start, mystery twister.
Yeah, and they rate them by level. So if you go here to levels 1, 2, 3, and X, so level 1 is probably everybody can solve that. And then if you get to X, they'll often have some of the world's most famous unsolved codes will be at that level.
Is this website your version of Wordle?
Wordle is like level 0.2.
Yeah, Wordle's like for me, and this is more for your level of problem solving. There's a bunch of questions. I'll answer the question about the recording. So yes, this has been recorded. It's going to be on the book club's YouTube channel. It takes a couple days for us to download it, clean it up, and get it uploaded to YouTube. But we will send out an email letting people know that it is up on the YouTube channel, and there'll be more information in that email about how to get a hold of Elonka and Klaus and their websites and all of that kind of stuff. We are about 10 minutes past the top of the hour, so I'm going to ask Klaus and Elonka if you want to, have any closing remarks that you want to share with us, and then we're going to wrap up.
The time flew by. I feel like we could have spoken on some books for much more time than we did. So we'd be happy to come back if there's any books in particular you'd like to hear more about. We're happy to speak on them.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down at the 125 encrypted books, some solved, some not. I could actually sit here all night and listen to you talk about each one. It was so interesting, and it did go so quickly and you talked a lot about a lot of them, which was great. Klaus, do you want to have any closing remarks for the group?
I don't think so. Well, it was my pleasure to give this talk, and yes, if there are plenty of more books of this kind, so maybe we can give another talk at some point in the future if there's interest.
Yeah,
there will certainly be enough material.
There definitely is. We would love to have you back. We'd love to have you here if you are in San Francisco. I know you're zooming in from Germany now, so it's what, 8-hour time difference?
9. Yes, it's 3 o'clock now. I'm starting to get tired, but that's okay.
3 o'clock in the morning. So we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna let Klaus go to sleep here. I just want to thank both Elonka and Klaus for joining us this evening. This was really fascinating. I loved it. And thank you out there for attending this Book Club of California program. You can register for any Book Club of California program online at bccbooks.org/programs. You could use the link in the weekly program emails that you're probably already getting from us. We'd love to have you join us in person here in San Francisco, in person in Pasadena in Southern California for an event, or online for any event that we have as a hybrid or online only program. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Be well and take care of yourself, and we hope to see you soon. Good night, everyone.